Welcome back to the Growth Hacking Culture podcast. I'm Ivan Palomino, your host, and today we are diving into the skill that is arguably the most crucial for human connection and success, yet often the most undervalued is listening. Think about it. How many times have you walked away from a conversation feeling unheard, or perhaps realizing you only caught half of what was said? In this fast-paced world, digitally saturated world, our attention spans are constantly under attack. Studies show that miscommunication costs US businesses about 1.2 trillion annually, and that shows 86% of employees citing ineffective communication for workplace as part of the failure. It is not just in the office either. Poor listening skills can damage personal relationships, leading frustration, missed opportunities, and a profound sense of disconnect. Now I'm going to stop reading and I'm going to tell you one thing. I'm so interested about this specific topic because it has been one of the biggest challenges in my bloody life to focus on the present and to understand what people are saying on the spot instead of doing this thing like many geeks like me have, preparing the next question and thinking about it while I'm discussing with someone. I'm going to just try to dump that. And by the way, I have started dumping that story, and I will tell you a little bit about that story just in the upcoming minutes. Joining me today is the author of this book, How to Listen, Oscar Trimboli. I love this book, and I was listening to it as I told Oscar instead of reading because it is painful to read sometimes when you need glasses. I was taking the audiobook for this specific book. Oscar, one, it was wonderful to listen to this book. And let me tell you in one shot what I liked about it. Based on science. It wasn't about just this story like any usual book on listening or any training about listening, about the interaction, the verbal, non-verbal interaction. It went way beyond this specific moment of interaction. It was before and after. And that thing, it was lovely. And for someone who loves science, the understanding of biases that drive the reason why it drives our inattention, that really struck me. Thank you. Thank you for this valuable book. Oscar, thank you for being part of this podcast today.
Yeah, Ivan, I'm looking forward to listening to your questions today.
You want to listen to my questions? That's wonderful. Um, Listen, I want to jump on the topic because a lot of people like us have kids. A lot of people like us, we have embarked in this era of being connected all the time and having more distractions than what we used to have back in the days when we were children. Do you see, or how that this constant barrage of notification and information is really impacting today our capacity to focus and listen to others? Is it becoming worse, or is it because we are becoming older and we are judging our kids?
Well, you have a choice whether you're old or young. Do you want to be a digital slave or do you want to use the technology? It's a mindset and a choice. Use the technology. Don't let the technology use you. There is one button in every operating system that people receive these notifications that you can move that says only send me a notification if I'm not in a meeting.
Hmm.
So in the workplace, we can stop all those notifications by having systems and defaults, not by trying to hack our way through it. As James Clear says, and he's written the book Atomic Habits, which has sold over 100 million copies globally. You don't rise to the level of your goal. Oh, I want to be a good listener. You fall to the level of your systems. So if you just simply find the do not disturb when I'm in a meeting button in your operating system, whether that's Android, whether that's Windows, whether that's iOS, you'll be further forward than 92% of other workplace communicators.
Hmm.
Now, Ivan, when it comes to your children, you're teaching them how to use or be a slave to technology every day. You're role modeling to them what good digital hygiene is. How are you going with that? Would you say you're exemplary, or would you say you're the slave to the technology?
I have the impression that this story about creating systems is the main topic of your book, by the way, because is every chapter has a way to create these systems that will avoid you falling already into the trap. But it's bloody
Hmm.
difficult. It's almost like nobody has the time to pause and think about how will I create that systemic approach for one specific challenge that we have in life. No, it is difficult,
Yeah.
especially when we are younger. We
No,
are
it's
so
not.
of
It's
it.
not difficult. I've just told you, you could stop our podcast recording right now if everybody went and moved that button in their operating system to no notifications when I'm in a meeting. You would not have any of the conversation you want to have with me next about what do I do and what happens if I get a notification, but what if I've got an important call to It's like, come on. Do you know where notifications started? Like, first of all, so an apology. I sold the technology, I marketed the technology, I installed the technology that creates all those notifications, right? So let's get out. I used to work at Microsoft and Vodafone, and telecoms and telecommunications and technology for 30 years. I'm sorry, but here's what you need to know. The research behind those red dots on your operating systems and your notifications comes from a piece of research commissioned by the slot machine industry, the poker machine industry in Las Vegas in the 1960s. It was published in 1972. And its sole purpose was how do we keep people mindlessly putting coins into a machine and pulling a handle, right? And it meant give them noises and notifications at regular intervals that giving them dopamine hits that says you're going well. So can you see that the technology behind the notification is merely designed to make you a slave to the technology? It's not liberating you. Your best work will never be done behind a notification. Your biggest innovation breakthrough, your biggest cultural change as a leader will never sit anywhere near anything to do with technology. It's all about how people use the technology. Therefore, it's all about people. And when it comes to people, it's always about communication. So, Ivan, that I can't underestimate how many times I've said it and how few people do it. But let me turn it the other way. When people do it, we have a research database with 35,000 people in it, not an insignificant set of data. We know that the people who switch that button for their notifications to do not disturb when in a meeting, they report back and say, on average, they save 2 hours a week
Hmm.
because their meetings are shorter and the meetings that they have are more productive. So if you want shorter meetings and more effective meetings, just go and do it now. Pause this podcast, stop listening to me, and just go and find that button in your iOS settings or your Windows settings or your Android settings. Move it across.
Coming back to this, the mention that you did about James Clear and this wonderful book, Atomic Habits, it isn't it is not enough to have just motivation to do that because everybody wants to stop. Just do it. It's a small action that will take you maybe 1 minute to find this bloody button somewhere in our
Yep.
mobiles, and just do it.
And with AI, it will tell you exactly which button to press, by the way. So you don't even have to you don't even have to listen to me. So but the point of that is then we can start to build on the foundation. One of the things I talk a lot about is think about whether you're paying attention or giving attention, right? paying attention is something you have to do. You feel like it's a duty, it's an obligation, you feel like it's taxation. You have to do it. You don't have a choice.
mm,
Or you can give attention. It's a gift. It's curiosity. It's coming from your heart and not from your head. When you give attention, you will change the way the other person speaks. You will change the other way the person describes their problem or their story because they know that you are present and available to them. The quality of your attention, not the quality of your questions, will change the way the speaker communicates. And when they know you're present, they don't feel rushed. They can tell the parts of the story that they want to tell, maybe a bit of background, but they're not competing with the next notification coming on your watch
mm,
or or your cell phone. They can tell that you're here to listen and have a human exchange. So when it comes to listening, just ask yourself this: do I feel obligated to listen to them? Or do I joyously and curiously and generously want to listen to them?
mm,
Because people will tell you more if you bring that second kind of attention to the conversation.
mm.
Unfortunately, if you haven't switched that button across, most people are in competition with the browser tabs in their own mind. So, Ivan, if I said to you right now, imagine I'm inside your brain and it's a browser window and you've got a tab open for something you've done, you've got a tab open for this conversation, you've got a tab open for the next question, you've got a tab open for what you want to have maybe for breakfast, lunch or dinner, you've got a tab open for the conversation you need to have with you. You've got all of these tabs open. And I'm going to put a red dot and a vibration and another notification in there. What hope have you got?
Nothing. That's the sad reality. Nothing.
Switch that one button across, please. That's where it starts. If you don't start from there, everything else I'm going to tell you is just a little.
That's the story. It's almost like killing all of the tabs that are open in one shot and just focus on Oscar. Let me tell you something. Is it like we humans, we have like a detector if somebody's giving attention? And by the way, I love the fact that one chapter is devoted to that, this differentiation with paying attention and giving attention, because I always use the word already. I pay attention. But that doesn't sound right. And I was thinking about it quite a lot. But do we have something natural in our brains that make us detect if somebody's really giving this attention?
So, the first thing you need to know about listening, it happens in a more modern part of the brain. So, as humans, as we evolve, we learn to see before we could speak. We could hear, but we couldn't necessarily speak before we could see and hear. So as humans, when we evolved, the part of the brain that's connected with sight and sound is much more ancient than the part of the brain that's connected with listening, which happens just behind the skull. It happens in the prefrontal cortex.
Hmm,
It happens in a place where it requires a lot of working memory.
hmm.
Now, a lot of people say to me, Oscar, can I multitask and listen? I said, yes, if you are performing a routine task with low consequence. So an example of that might be you're preparing a meal, you're drinking a wine, you're listening to music, you can have a conversation in low consequence environments. Now, most workplaces, that's not true. The consequence of the conversation has a cost in terms of time, in money, in resources, in profitability, in timely delivery, in quality. There are a whole group of dimensions when it comes to listening. So, as humans, what happens is we tend to, when we're in a good relationship with somebody that we know well, we will tend to sync up our speaking speeds, the way we speak, and we start when we know that we're in an environment that the person is actually listening. Why do we know this as a human? We're not competing with anybody else. It's just the person or the group in front of us. Yeah. As long as we feel like, for most workplace environments, it's very easy to tell if the person's even paying attention, let alone giving attention. Are they competing with another device?
Mm. Have you noticed
Look,
that
I
some people?
remember.
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I remember a Microsoft vice president back in 2008 flew from Seattle to Sydney, effectively a 24-hour flight. I was hosting 20 CEOs of technology companies. Peter arrived on time. We're in a boardroom in a big hotel in the city, and there were 20 CEOs of other technology partners and in the Microsoft ecosystem at the time. And I introduced Peter and I said, Peter's going to talk about this and the future. And as soon as I did, he's at the head of the table. He got up and he walked away. And I thought, what's going on? He walked away. He took out his cell phone. He's American, so it's a cell phone, mobile phone, and put it in his bag. Then he walked back and he explained to everybody, look, I've traveled 24 hours. I've switched my phone off. The most important thing I can give everybody in this meeting right now is my complete and undivided attention. Now, what happened next? 18 CEOs are fumbling in their jackets and all of this and switching themselves to silent or turn it off. How do I know it was 18 and not 20? Because two phones rang during the meeting. What was interesting though is it's nearly 20 years since that meeting took place. And there are still CEOs that I talk to who remember that meeting because of the connections they made in that meeting. They said the quality of the conversation the group had, because everybody was present, was completely different. These people meet in industry functions very regularly. They may be competitors one minute, they may be collaborators another minute, but they still remember that piece of theatre from Peter who said, I'm going to switch off my phone. And I asked him in the debrief, did you just do that because you're jet lagged? Did you do that because you're in Australia? He says, no, I do it in every meeting. I'm not doing it for me. I'm doing it for them. I want them to pay attention to everyone else in the meeting. And that's one of the things about listening. You need to know a good meeting host will get everybody to listen to the active speaker. Great meeting host will get everybody to listen to each other. So when it comes to listening, we can tell where everybody's attention is at.
Mm. Despite the fact of the wonderful his story that you just mentioned, I still notice that there is many meetings that are important, like market review or preparing the strategy for the next year, where out of the 20 people that would be in the meeting room, there will be a little bit less of half opening their laptops and doing in parallel, what they call listening, and at the same time
Yeah, sure.
working. Even when, for instance, I'm pretty sure that when you are facilitating your certain of your trainings, there are some people, oops, I just need quickly to answer to this important call or the important email. It's almost like corporations haven't put out there the importance of listening. And they think that is a good trade-off, that if something is important, you decide and you will break that listening flow just because you have decided that this is important on that specific meeting. Isn't it terrible that
If,
we are encouraging that?
no, no. When organizations are just collections of people, and somebody is leading all of these meetings. So if you come into a workshop I run, one of the first things they'll say in the setup is, feel free, use your laptop, use your mobile phone, no problem, right? You're all adults, you know what to do. Okay. But then what I do is I go around the room and this works in bigger rooms too, you can use electronic tools for this, like Menti. And I go around the room and say, what will make this a good X? What will make this a good conversation, a good workshop, a good board meeting, whatever it is, right? And everybody goes around the room. And if it's electronic, we display the results, and the AI tool will automatically group those responses in a category so people can self identify. Now, we do this for two reasons. The first one is to role model listening, and the
Mhm.
second one is to treat the room like adults, right? We don't have to say, put your phones in the box and we're going to lock it up, right? They're adults, they can choose. And I say to them, imagine it's a 2 hour workshop. For the next 2 hours, you'll regularly get bored with what I say. You'll regularly get distracted by what I say. You'll regularly get into a situation where you go, that's not true in our organization. That's not true in our context. And when that happens, or maybe you're trying to solve the problem, when that happens, I want you to remember this. Are you listening from your perspective, or could you choose to listen from somebody else's perspective during the conversation so you can move around in the room, not physically, but literally, so your attention can be present? And what do event managers and meeting hosts and CEOs and chairs always say to me, Ivan, at the end of the meeting? Oscar, how the hell did you keep everyone off their phone? Why isn't anybody using a laptop? There is a leader in the room that creates the culture, and you can accept somebody working. And, like, to be honest, there are times where I've walked up behind somebody and I can see what they're working on, and I just whisper in their ear, probably not a good meeting for you to be in. Happy for you to leave, right? Now, most people don't, they're embarrassed or they put their lid down. Some continue working, but that's okay. But these are the exception. They're not the average in the room.
Hmm. And
So the point of the exercise is make sure you ask each participant in the meeting before you start, hey, quickly in one sentence, what will make this a good conversation? And then the host says to everybody, hey, occasionally you may get distracted today. Just pick another person's perspective when you do get distracted, or remind yourself of what will make it a good meeting.
mm. Now, I mentioned to you at the start that what struck me in your book it was that you highlight the importance of listening to yourself as the first level of listening. So listening starts before the action. It starts way before. Why is this foundational self-awareness so critical before we can effectively listen to others? This preparation time.
Yeah. If you want to compete with working memory and all those browser tabs that you've got open, you, everything else is going to be ineffective. Your questions are going to be ineffective. Your dialogue's going to be ineffective. Your pausing is going to be ineffective. And the people in the room know that you're not really there. So there's 5 levels when it comes to listening, and most people think listening starts by focusing on the speaker. It doesn't.
Mm.
Listening happens before, during, and after the conversation. Before the meeting, you need to be ready. Give yourself a fighting chance and shut down one or two of the browser tabs. Now, apparently, 299, if you use Chrome, is the maximum number of browser tabs you can have open. Because I was doing a workshop once and somebody decided that they would use a AI tool to see how many windows and tabs they could open before the browser exploded. So when it comes to humans, I don't know what the equivalent explosion would be if you had 299 browser tabs open in your mind. When you have that, you have enough available working memory. Remember what I said, the prefrontal cortex is where listening takes place. When you do that, you give yourself a chance to start to notice, start to see, start to hear, start to sense. Listening isn't about two ears and one mouth. There are so many other dimensions, and your body is one of the most potent ways to use as a way to listen to the other person. By having that foundational self-awareness of, am I ready to listen? Because Ivan, sometimes the best thing you can do is reschedule the meeting if you're not ready, or just to say to somebody who might bump into you in a corridor or at a workstation, hey, excuse me, I'd love to hear what you've got to say, but now is just not a good time for me. Can we talk about this in half an hour, tomorrow, the next day? Be choiceful about when you listen and the container you create around your listening to.
Mm. I noticed that you were avoiding the word mindfulness in your book. Is that correct? Did I spot it right? That you didn't want to use that word, but you were talking about some preparation through breathing, but you avoided this mindfulness stuff. Was there any specific reason? Just in
Did
order
I did I
to
write that? Did I?
no, you didn't. You were talking about breathing, but you were not talking about mindfulness. So you didn't dwell on the topic
Oh,
in the preparation on before the meeting. The focus that you need to do, and you mentioned breathing, but not mindfulness as a toolkit to refocus before the meeting. Is there
yeah, I
any
guess I'll leave
specific
that to
reason?
people. I leave that to people who write the mindfulness books. I talk about the techniques that, like, I've interviewed 120 of the world's most diverse workplace listeners, judges, journalists, opera singers, hostage negotiators, and even experts on breathing. Why did I interview experts on breathing? Because the opera singers told me about the importance of breath
Mm.
in their process. When I interviewed world champion military snipers, they talked about breath. When I interviewed mediators, they talked about the fact that they got themselves into breathing exercises. So I go, oh yeah, yeah. Look, I know the field of mindfulness exists, but to me that's a big field to play on. For me, I'm looking for practical and pragmatic tips for my clients to work with. I'm not academic. I come from the workplace. I have the data to back up the interventions we're talking about. There are obviously elements of mindfulness in
Mm.
being confident enough to notice your breath. There are elements of mindfulness in being pausing enough to go, maybe now's not a good time for the conversation. There are elements of that. But this was definitely not a conscious choice or anything like that. It's just not a field I'm an expert in.
But tell me, Oscar, in practically, and what is your favorite technique that you use in order to, let's say, prepare for this podcast interview or and say, oh,
Oh, it's
even though
easy.
it's late,
I play music. Play
music.
music.
Uh-huh.
Music, absolutely. The fastest way to rewire your brain is to play music. So for me, I will always play music to match the tempo of the person I'm speaking to or the person I'm speaking to in the audience for this podcast conversation. So, listening happens before, during, and after this conversation. I listened to a couple of your interviews to see what speed does Ivan talk at? What energy level are we at? And this is not a comfortable place for me to be, but I'm speaking at about 150 words per minute where I'll normally talk at 100 because I'm matching to make you feel comfortable. And by extension, that's where your audience will be as well. So there's a range of songs. I talk about it in the book. There's a very slow song by Marconi Union. It's instrumental only, and it's about 80 beats per minute. There's a song by Groove Armada that's about 120 minutes. And Remember the Name by Fort Minor, that's at about 180 beats per minute. And that's the song I listened to before this conversation. But I challenge anybody to listen to a song and it not close down browser tabs for them. Right? If you listen to music you love, the likelihood is it's actually going to get you to your happy place a place where you're shutting down some of the browser tabs so you can get ready there. The other most practical tip is just to drink a glass of water before the conversation starts, or to notice your breathing before it starts and just take 4 deeper breaths, hold them longer than you normally would. And breathing, music, and water. They're
Hmm.
very practical tips. And these were universal. I mean, obviously, a military sniper is not going to be listening to music, but they may be humming to themselves, as an example.
Hmm.
An opera singer is definitely going to play music. So when it comes to our listening, these are some of the things we can use as techniques to get ready before we can move into the other 4 levels of listening.
Hmm. I was wondering that, of course, we can use breathing exercises to close some tabs, music, as you mentioned, but sometimes we have the challenge of saying, "Am I really there?" Because let's say that today is early morning in Switzerland, and I just woke up like 30 minutes ago. I need to focus on what I'm going to be saying with the type of person that I'm going to be saying it to. And sometimes while you are doing the breathing exercises, is it looks like something to do to saying to refocus. This is important. That this is the reason, and this is how I'm feeling today. So between using breathing exercises to close some tabs and to refocus or to be present, can we do both at the same time, or should we prioritize between closing tabs or feeling present to the topic that we are going to have today without having any judgments or whatever reason?
So right now, right now, Ivan, just take one breath, hold it for 4 seconds longer than you would normally do, and do it 4 times, right? So you go, and let's do this real time.
I just did it. And I remember something that you
And
say in
what,
your book. Don't breathe with the mouth, breathe with the nose.
okay, and what's going on for you now?
I'm here. I'm looking at you. I don't have anything prepared to say next. I'm just here.
Great. And for most of us in a workplace conversation, we can't close our eyes unless we're on a Zoom with, 5 other people. You could probably get away with it, no problem. But immediately before that, if you want to hit rewind, you will notice I did the same thing while Ivan was talking. I just took 4 deep breaths, come to presence, and I was ready to go. Okay, let's share the exercise. Just get Ivan to get into that place. And as a result, you change the way the other person speaks. Because before that, he was off somewhere, and all of a sudden he went, and then I remembered, breathe through your nose, not through your mouth. Although you started through your mouth. Yeah? Yeah.
Yes.
Now I speculate we'll have a different next set of questions than we would have if you just continued, right? Now, when you're meeting somebody for the first time in a high consequence sales environment or a high consequence safety meeting, maybe that's not the time to, pause, close your eyes and do that. But if you're in a relationship with somebody and you can invite them, I think the conversation will have a different texture. The other thing is if you slow down how you talk and create some pauses in the conversation, they will hear different things than if I was talking at the speed I was a couple of minutes ago. So where do you want to go, Ivan? Given we've got a little bit to go.
I have more questions because self-awareness is part of the important topic that you cover in your book. And especially the area where we have our internal noises or biases that get
Mm,
into in the way of listening.
mm.
Is there a way so that we can do the work of acknowledging these biases? It doesn't mean you cannot kill them. We're humans. Otherwise, we wouldn't survive if we didn't have some certain biases. But we can tame them, I guess. We can be aware.
Yeah.
How can we do the trick of doing this work of this is the list of biases that Ivan has in priority?
Yeah. And, we want to move those biases from sitting in the driver's seat with the accelerator and the steering wheel and putting them either in the passenger seat or the back seat, right? But we have to acknowledge that they exist first. We can't kind of not acknowledge them. So this is what our listening research is about. So we've got a listening quiz, listeningquiz.com. You can take the quiz yourself. 20 questions, 7 minutes on average, 4.5 minutes to complete, but we say 7 minutes. You get a report that says your primary and secondary listening barriers and three tailored tips about what to do about it as well. So when it comes to our listening, there's four primary biases, four primary barriers that get in our way. The obvious one is distracted, right? We're lost. We're not sure why we're here. I've got to chase a rabbit. Well, did somebody say rabbit? Did you say blue rabbit? Oh, I love reading rabbits, right? Um, right. That's a good example of complete distraction. We call them the lost listener. Another listener is the problem solving listener, right? They go, yeah, I know. Yeah, I've had this conversation 9 times before. I know what he's going to say next. I know how to solve this. Let me jump ahead and I'm going to solve this. But you don't say anything. You just politely nod and, in your head. And this shrewd behavior, we call it the shrewd listening villain. The speaker says in our research, they're trying to fix me. So, not the problem, you're trying to fix me. So, if you have that bias, just be cautious because in your head you're going, "Oh, I'm being so generous. Not only am I going to tell them the answer to this problem, but I'm going to tell them the next three problems after that as well because I'm so awesome." The next is interrupting. Somebody jumps in, presses the buzzer on the quiz show before the host has finished, and they answer the wrong question. Yeah, and these people are very productivity and time orientated, but they just slow down every conversation. Even if they're right, they change the way the speaker speaks because the speakers say when the interruption shows up, I'm just going to say less. I'm not going to trust as much. I'm not going to be as adventurous in what I share with the other person because I know they're just going to cut me off. So we've got lost and shrewd and interrupting. And then the final one is the person who listens like this. You say, "Oh, I'm really struggling with my manager, Ivan." And they jump in and go, "Oh, you think you've got a bad manager? Let me tell you about the worst manager I've ever had. And let me tell you about the worst merger I've ever had." And in their head, this person is trying to create a connection, right? They're trying to create some level of connection with the other person to go, "I see you here. Can I share something so we've got something in common?" Here's what the speaker says about those kinds of listeners. I'm on stage, I'm telling my story, and then they just move the spotlight onto them. Now I'm a nobody. I'm in the dark and it's all about them. So we call this listener dramatic. So we've got dramatic, interrupting, lost, and shrewd. These primary biases are always driven from a place of solving, productivity, empathy with the person who's trying to jump in and tell their story, and orientation or perspective. The lost person doesn't know their purpose in the conversation. For each of those, if they simply ask at the beginning of the conversation, what will make this a good conversation, Ivan? Not what will make this a good conversation for you. That's a very different question. if you ask what will make this a good conversation, they'll say something. And when you get bored, lost, trying to solve, jump in early, think about that question at the beginning and go, is the thing I'm going to do next helping us move forward to answer the question they said at the beginning, not what they're saying at the moment? Because we haven't even touched on the neuroscience of listening and the neuroscience of speaking, because they speak at 900, they speak at 110 to 125 words per minute. They can go hard, even faster, but they think at 900. So it
Mm.
means the first thing they say is about 14% of what they're thinking. If I say that another way, if you just jump in, if you solve, if you anticipate, you're missing out on 86% of what they think or what they mean. And when you hear what they think and what they mean, they'll feel seen, heard, and valued. They'll tell you much more than you ever imagined, and you will solve more transformational problems rather than transactional issues, which is generally within the content. So, which one of those four do you think you are? I'm going to guess you're the solving kind of listener.
That's if you ask my wife, yes, definitely. My wife
Mm.
really thinks that I'm that type of person. Sometimes I have the impression because of this podcast that I want to empathize. So I started throwing a little bit of my stories inside. But the purpose
Yeah.
is not like taking the spot. It is more, I want to find something in common with this person in front of me. Oscar, I have, it just came to my mind a very personal question, in fact, that is related to the lack of focus on our society and well, I wouldn't say the lack of focus. I would say the lack of practice to do something about the lack of focus, so that we don't make the time to create this self-awareness about what drives our focus, what how we can control it, what type of biases do I have, and you have probably heard that ADHD is has become a little bit more present in our society. We discuss about it for kids, and then we sometimes we recognize, oh, but that's what I had, in fact, for older people like us.
Yeah,
Um,
it's more diagnosed now. That's true. Yeah.
yeah, but is it only the diagnosis that makes it grow this percentage of people with the HDHD, or is it also that we are triggering by our lifestyle and by our lack of systems to control it, that it is bigger? It's just an opinion. I know that you don't talk about it in your book, but what is your opinion about that?
Look, I have a granddaughter who's been diagnosed with that, right? And she can be making beads, talking to Alexa, watching YouTube shorts all at the same time, no problem. Okay? Just don't try and have a conversation with her at the same time
Hmm.
because her brain can process so many things really, really well, yet not human conversation in that Venn diagram of beads and YouTube shorts and Alexa and all these other things, all right? But I want to broaden that and go, everybody has a different communication style. And I
Hmm.
think one of the things that is a responsibility as an older generation is because we have more experience, we're going to have to adjust our communication style to match theirs at the beginning, to build trust, to build relationship, to build progress. Yeah. If we just go, I've got this label, you've got that label, so labels are really good on food jars and pharmaceuticals. I'm not sure how helpful it is to label people versus labeling behaviors. Yeah.
Hmm.
So we always talk about with our listening villains, this is not you, this is your listening behavior. You can change your listening behavior. That's not for debate. So just be cautious about the assumptions we apply automatically when people have some kind of neurodivergent diagnosis. It just means they have a different communication style from a standard deviation of 1 and 2. That just means that when I talk to Ruby, I talk to her in very short sentences with very explicit instructions if it's an instruction. And I only provide one. Like I don't say that, and Ruby's the granddaughter. Hey Ruby, we're going to football training. You got to put your shin pads on. You got to put your boots on. You got to put your uniform on. Please pack up everything. And it's like she's forgotten the first thing I said by the time. It's like, Ruby, we're going in 5 minutes. Like this literally happened a few weeks ago, right? Ruby, we're going in 5 minutes. Ruby, we're going in 2 minutes. Ruby, we're going in 1 minute. Now, I would never say that to anybody else, but that works for her. So, are you, as a wiser older generation, just being cautious about matching your comm style to theirs? And then you can build relationships from there. Oh, you're so frustrating, Ruby. You never listen to me, right? That's another approach you could adopt. I wish you'd listen to me. You don't listen. She does. It's just differently. And you've just got to adjust to begin with, and then you build a relationship from there. I'm not sure if that helps your question, but it's just a real world example for me.
Oscar, it definitely helps because I can recognize some patterns, some things that we do with someone that we know dearly, our younger daughter, that we are doing as a mistake. Thank you for that. And it's good that I dare to push a little bit of my personal life inside. Um, I have one last question before we close this wonderful episode. Um, can you share some exercise or simply daily practice that listeners can use to cultivate greater self-awareness about their own listening habits? But the type of self-awareness that is not, yeah, I'm a good listener. And in fact, we suck at that. Something that will help us realize what exactly are we.
Just use that question that we talked about earlier on. If you use that question, well, we'll make this a good conversation, right? So that's how you increase. Now you think, oh, that question's about them. No, it's not. It's about them and you. And if it's a group meeting, it's about everybody else because the obligation on you by asking that question is you have to say the same thing. What will make it a good conversation for me is dot, 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 dot. So the other person knows too, right? So then you've got a fighting chance because you have declared something to them that increases your self-awareness about what you want to get out of the conversation. And now you have handcuffs on. You have to listen from their perspective and for your purpose. And whenever it's like, I want to run away. No, no, no. Remember that question you asked, or remember that statement you made. So declaring that and just getting into a simple practice, what will make this a good conversation? What will make this a good interview? What will make this a good proposal? Whatever it is, right? And make sure you tell them what it is for you too. It will act as a way for you. Once you've declared it, you go, well, I better pay attention to that too, from my perspective and theirs. So when you get lost, or when you try and solve, or when you try and anticipate, and all those things we talked about earlier on, before you do any of that, just ask yourself, is this helping progress that question we asked right at the beginning?
Something to do, something to do. Thank you very much for this advice. Now, Oscar, how can people reach you out? I'm pretty sure that certain people would be interested about the book. Some of them might be also interested about the framework that you have developed out of this book that helps organizations to create really a better listener organization. How can
Yeah.
they reach you out?
Yeah. So don't. I would rather you connect with your listening than connect with me. So visit listeningquiz.com, take the assessment, answer the 20 questions, discover your listening biases, and then in your report, you'll have all kinds of links that can connect you with wherever you want to go with
Mm.
that conversation, whether it's corporate workshops, corporate keynotes, or whether that's a team-based intervention. We'll connect from there. But I would rather you connect with your listening than connect with me. I love you all, but there's only so many people I can have a chat with. But this tool, join the 35,000 other people around the world that have taken the assessment.
That's a good way. Yeah. Start by listening to understand what type of listeners you are. And that from there is already so many roads that they can take in order to progress and have an interaction with you, Oscar. Oscar, it was lovely to spend time with you. Really, I'm happy. And now I have become so familiar with your Australian accent. Thank you very much. By the way, my wife cracked a joke about your accent. But anyways, Australian people, you know them, huh?
Come on, what was the joke?
It's just that as soon as because we were driving and I put, of course, your audiobook on. And as soon as we started, she started just laughing about it. Oh, this is an Australian accent.
Very nice, very nice. Well, say
Oscar,
hello to your wife from me.
thank
Thanks
you.
for listening.
Thank you. It was lovely to spend time with you. Thank you very much. Have an excellent